share two readings from the Bible with you as we look at the topic of focusing on God, the importance of focusing on God. First, about the wise men. Behold, there came wise men saying, where is he born? Where is he that is born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east and have come to worship him. Now, as I say those words, I want you to think about this. Were they only following a star? Was that their only indication? Was that the only thing that prompted them to go to such great lengths to find Jesus? And in Psalm chapter 1 and verse 1, blessed is the man who stands not in the counsel of the wicked, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of scoffers. But his delight is in the law of the Lord. And on his law he meditates day and night. He's like a tree planted by streams of water that yield its fruit in its season, and its leaf does not wither. In all that he does, he prospers. The wicked not so, but are like chaff that the wind drives away. Therefore the wicked will not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. What does it mean when we are willing to really make the effort and focus on God and on the Bible? I read this the other day. I love this comment. The constant distractions of Christmas are enough to drive even the happiest people into being a little bit of a Scrooge. There's distractions all around us, and it seems to be more intense at this time of year. And it can be very disrupting and disturbing. Sometimes we might even get frustrated and fed up with hearing, keep Christ in Christmas, because we're getting barraged with all these messages. Nevertheless, it's very important. And that's why I'm going to talk this morning about staying focused. Staying focused. Paul said to the Colossians, set your minds on the things that are above, not on the things of this earth. Focus on God. Focus on his message. Don't let all these things distract you and pull you away. Jesus said these words in Matthew chapter 6, but seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. What? Sometimes we get caught up in all of these things that he just naturally wants to give us, all that we need. There's a significant impact on our well-being and our effectiveness when we stay focused. And we're going to use the three wise men as a great example of the difference of staying focused. Now, staying focused is vitally important, but it is so difficult at times. And even when I was writing these words, I was constantly being distracted to the point of frustration at times. I'm in there and I'm working away, and there's this email and this phone call and this thing happening and that thing happening. And I had to keep bringing myself back because I kept saying, this is important. I have to focus on this. It's not easy, is it? And we're all like that. And some of the distractions that we have to deal with, some of them are light, and we can look at it and say, it's not too bad, I can just refocus. Some of them are very serious. Some people are going through some very serious, difficult, and challenging moments. Nonetheless, we need to stay focused on God. And the people who are involved in this very first Christmas can be good reminders to us of what we can do and what can be accomplished even through distractions if we remain focused. Focused even through the most difficult and challenging of moments. Let's take a look at Mary, for example. Was Mary distracted? Did she have distractions going on in her life, or was she just solely focused on, I'm going to give birth to God's Son? Of course she had distractions. Mary's a young woman. She had raging hormones. Has anybody had teenagers in their household?
Nope.
There is something to be grateful for. She's got all these emotions going on, and yet she's a young bride, and she's married to this older man, and she's got to figure out, how do I make a life with this person? And in the midst of all of this, she's pulled away from her family. Does she have distractions? She has a lot, but very serious distractions. And yet, she managed to stay focused. What about Joseph? Joseph comes into a new relationship with hope, and then he finds out that his wife is expecting, and he has nothing to do with this whatsoever. And God says to him, this is all a miracle. I've done this for all of our sakes. And yet Joseph's got all of this going on in his mind, while at the same time he has to take his wife away from his livelihood. He can't even provide for her. Off they go in their fast steed. Excuse me, donkey. Do you think he has some serious Are you kidding me? He probably said that at some point in time. In Hebrew, I don't know how you say that. I'd love to learn. Are you kidding me? Let's think about the wise men. Now these are royal advisors, and they're coming from a land where they are treated royally, and they're living in the lap of luxury. And they decide to make this long journey, which costs them a tremendous amount of time, effort, and money. And they encounter along the way probably discouragements and disappointments. Do you think they had distractions? And yet they saw it through to the end. Okay, what are the names of the three wise men? Now, you have to understand this too, is that, okay, there are three names given to us, and there are three gifts. I was asking Judy this morning, how do you know there are only three wise men? Well, the three names are Gaspar, Melchior, and Balthazar. Thank you very much. But were there only three? It names three. It names three gifts. But here's the thing to understand. When they left, they didn't, like John and Donna, head off in their trusty Dodge Caravan with air conditioning, or heat in this particular case. And if it became a little bit odorous in the vehicle, have you ever traveled with family? I always appreciated those little odor things that you hung over top of the mirror. Well, they didn't have that. Maybe they hung it on the camel's ear, I'm not sure. But they had a long and very difficult journey. Let's take a look at some of the facts behind that. One thing they know for sure is that the distance from where they were going, and there's two different ideas of where they might have come from, either Iran or Iraq, but it would have been approximately 750 miles or 1,300 kilometers just to travel by air to get there, the straight distance. But they couldn't do that. They had to travel by camel, and so the journey was 1,300 kilometers. It's about the same distance as from here to Calgary. And I know there's a few people who can make that in one day, traveling by car. But it's quite a bit different when you're traveling on a camel going 5 kilometers or 3 miles an hour. Now, they wouldn't have been able to take the direct route, so they would take what was called the old silk trading route, which added another 700 kilometers to the trip. Now we're talking about a trip that would take us from here to Kamloops in British Columbia. By camel, through desert. Long, long journey. 4 months it would have taken them. That takes commitment, right? That takes focus. You get up in the morning and you've got saddle sores. And the last thing you want to do is the first thing you have to do, is get back up on that camel and keep going on. I believe they were really focused. I believe they were really focused. And they weren't just focused on a star. You see, the star was kind of like that last bit of guidance that God was going to provide them. You see, they had studied and studied and studied, and they had discovered through their studies of the Old Testament that the Messiah was going to come. And so they're taking all of this information that they have learned and focused on, and then God gives them this light, and they go, yes, this is it. We know it, and they focus on it. Another thing to understand, too, is that it would have cost them a lot of money to take this trip. You see, because they're royal advisors. And they're not just going to leave their environment and go off on their own. You can't do that. It's not safe. So they would have brought an army with them. And they would have brought servants with them. And probably Chef Jason, Judy, would have come along to make sure their meals were well taken care of. They would have brought all these, and they'd have to feed them and take care of them. It cost a lot of money. So they're committing time. They're committing their resources. They're going to have to ask for leave to do this. They know why. And they're convinced this is what they have to do. And they focus on it. And even when they get to Jerusalem, and they go first to Jerusalem, now that's a natural thing for them to do because they're royal advisors. So it's like royalty coming into another person's kingdom. The first thing you do is you don't check in at the Holiday Inn. You go to see the ruler. You have to ask their permission. Is it okay if we're here with our little army and our entourage? Is it okay with you? This is the reason why we're doing this. This is all the reason. They're going to show them. They're not going to say, hey, there's a star up there, and that's the only thing we know. They're going to pull out, and they're going to show them the scroll. This is the reason why we're doing this. So they were focused on a clear message. They were exhausted. They were probably disappointed, but they saw it through to the end. And that's a key message for us today, is to remain focused. In spite of all of the distractions, is to remain focused. All the persons involved in Christmas, that first Christmas, had things to distract them, serious things to distract them, life-altering distractions, and yet they remained focused. They made the effort. They made the decision. And that's what it takes, isn't it? You have to make the choice to stay focused. It doesn't just come naturally to us. Our natural tendency is to go off in this direction and that direction. I love the story about our son when he was in school. And we were talking with his grade school teacher, and she said, oh, he's a wonderful student when he's focused. But if a butterfly goes past the window, I've lost him. It's our natural tendency. We have to make that decision to stay focused. Let me give you a few thoughts around that. First, here's a thought. Our feelings will follow our focus. Did you hear that? Our feelings will follow our focus. Now, there's several things to understand about feelings, and that is, our feelings will push us in certain directions, but then we make the choice on what to focus, and then our feelings will comply. So our feelings follow our focus. Let me ask you a question. Are feelings always based upon reality?
No.
No. They're not always based upon reality. So therefore, can our feelings pull us away from reality? Yeah. I was talking with a young fellow the other day, and John and I are actually talking about this. You remember that statement, stinking thinking? Anybody heard that one there? It's when you base your thinking upon your negative thoughts, and your negative thoughts take you down a wrong path. For those of you who like not chemical, but like more professional terminology, it's cognitive distortion. Cognitive distortion, what does it mean? Well, according to the Cambrian Dictionary, it's the type of thinking when we're in a negative thought process where we're thinking that we are bad and we only deserve what is bad. It's a negative way of thinking about ourselves and a negative way of believing about ourselves. I'm no good, therefore nothing good should happen to me. Here's a good example of that. Have you ever tried something and not quite succeeded? Has anybody ever done that? You tried something and not quite made it? I go into my garage sometimes and Judy only sees the things that I want her to see. That's a secret now, don't tell her, okay? She doesn't see the things that I fail to make. Now here's the thought about that. So if I'm making something and it doesn't work out, now I can take it several ways, but I know you won't do this, so I'm just going to give you this as an example and you can think about other people. So you're making something and it cuts the wrong way. I always do that. It always happens to me. Things never work out for me. I'm done. Now, I know you don't think like that. But here's another thought process that you could have. Oh, rats, I made a mistake. Okay, I'll try again. You see the difference now? When we allow our negative emotions to control our thoughts, they take us down a path, don't they? And it's rarely positive, and it's rarely productive. And there's a couple of examples of how we get down this negative path. And I love some of these examples. It's different ways we look at things. So different ways, for example, I'm going to have to go back to the other slide, okay? Things like all or nothing thinking. I call that black and white thinking. All is good or all is bad. That's all there is to it. There's no in between. You know, if a bad thing happens, it's all bad. There's no in between. It's like thinking in absolutes. You know that babies think in absolutes. I want to be fed. Now, that's it. Absolutely. But we've matured. And God has given us the ability to reason. And when He gave us that ability to reason, He expects us to reason it out, not just to go down the negative path. Overgeneralizing. Here's another one too. Overgeneralizing. That's the idea, as I said before. Oh, this never works out for me. And who said it never works out for you? Because if it never worked out, you wouldn't be here today. Okay. Jumping to conclusions. Some people, the only exercise they get is jumping to conclusions. Well, let me ask you a question. Have you ever misinterpreted a situation? Have you ever misread a situation? Or are you always right in thinking negatively about a situation? Let me ask you another question. Can you read minds? Let me just sit here for a second. I can barely read my own. I'm lost. So you don't know what other people are thinking, even though you may overgeneralize and jump to conclusions. They're thinking this about me. Are you able to predict the future? Do you know with certainty what's going to be happening in the next 5 minutes? I know some of you are thinking, I know what's going to be happening in the next 5 minutes. She's going to still be talking. Well, you got that right. But can you go on further than that? And you know with certainty that you're going to be sitting here, I'm going to be standing here. Then you might be thinking, well, I know he's going to be talking for the next 5 minutes. I'm getting tired, and so I might fall asleep. Now you have choices. You see what I mean? You have choices because you're thinking about it. Well, I could get up and I could walk around and wake up a little bit and come back down. He'll still be talking, but I can come back down. But we can't predict the future. Here's another one I really like. Should statements. You know, shoulda, woulda, coulda, but didn't. Those are things that pull us into this negativity. Personalizing, it's my fault, I'm always messing up. But then the next one here, on how to get out of that. I'll give you a few ideas on how to pull yourself out of this type of thinking process. First, you have to look at yourself and you say, how am I feeling right now? You see, because how we feel physically, doesn't that impact how we think? And so instead of getting down on yourself, you look at it and say, I really don't feel good today. Well, what do I expect from myself? So you've got to focus a little bit more. Here's another one. I've mentioned this before. Don't ever argue with your thoughts. You'll always lose. If you argue with yourself, you lose. Does that make sense? You reframe it. You state it differently. Another one too, refocusing. Instead of saying the situation is impossible, you refocus and you say, okay, what can I do within this situation? What can be done that will be helpful? Another one too, surrounding yourself with positive-minded people. Surrounding yourself with positive-minded people. I remember reading these stories about William Churchill and King George. Now, they would get on the radio and they would broadcast on a regular basis to the people living in Britain. And think about the people living in London. In the evenings where they were being bombarded and they didn't know what was going to happen the next moment and they didn't know what they were going to wake up to. But Winston Churchill and the king would broadcast what kind of message? Oh, we're done? No. They would broadcast inspirational messages, messages of encouragement, messages of hope. And the people would be inspired to continue and not give up. Surround yourself with those kind of people. There are all sorts of naysayers out in the world. And it's nice once in a while to encourage them, but don't hang around too long because they're going to bring you down. And then stay focused on the powerful Word of God because it will change your life. Philippians chapter 4, verse 6, Paul states this. Do not be anxious about anything. You might stop and say, well, that's easy for him to say. No, it's not, because he's writing this from a prison cell. Well, let's go on. But, he said, in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. He's speaking from experience. And he's saying, focus. Now, how do I know that? And what does he say to focus on? Well, let's continue reading this. He said, finally, brothers and sisters. I love this. I just love this. Whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Whatever you've learned, he said, whatever you've learned or received or heard from me or seen in me, put it into practice, and the God of peace will be with you. You see that? He's giving it really clearly. You can't make it any more clearly. Take the Bible, learn it, focus on the message, and bring it with you wherever you go. The more we focus on the message, God, the more it will direct our path. And our lives will be more effective. Let's skip a little bit over to, going back to the wise men, okay? They have to picture this scene. So they've been traveling for some 4 odd months, and they arrive in Jerusalem. And they go to visit Herod. Herod's a really positive person. He's very popular among the people too. And for those who've read a little bit about Herod, you know that I am not, I'm being facetious, they call him. He's a dirty, rotten scoundrel of the worst kind. And they're going with an excitement, you know, because they've read all about this. This star has been an indication for them. They're following the star. They're following what they've learned. They're all excited. They're all pumped. They're close to the destination. They're going to come and meet the Messiah. And they come and share this news and they're greeted with, what? And Herod's looking at him going, oh my heavens, I'm in trouble. A usurper? I'm going to have to deal with this. But he's nice with them. Why didn't you tell me all about it? So I can get this guy. And then they go to the scholars of the time, the biblical scholars. Now, they're expecting some enthusiasm. And the scholars look down and go, really? You're kidding me. I didn't see that one coming. Well, let's take a look at it. And then they look at Micah chapter 5, verse 2, and they say, oh, but you, Bethlehem Ephratah, though you are small among the clans of Judah, out of you will come for me one who will be ruler over all of Israel, whose origins are from of old, from ancient times. Is that what you mean? It's here. You can't see it. Bethlehem? No way. Bethlehem's not a nice place at all. There's a few young people like Joseph and Mary there, but who else? I don't know. Here, it's here. And so the wise men are sitting there, and after all this trip, they're going, what's going on? Why aren't these people overjoyed? Why aren't they ecstatic? Haven't they read? Don't they know what's going to happen? Don't you think they might have been a little bit disappointed? Somebody else is not sharing their enthusiasm? But when they leave Herod, you see, God comes to them and he speaks to them, but they're what? They're open to listen to God. They're paying attention to God. They're focusing on God. See, after leaving Herod, to read this part, then the star appeared to them again, guiding them to Bethlehem. They're open. There's the star again. Follows along with what we've been learning. Let's go, guys. Let's find out what. Can't wait to get there. They're exhausted. They're sore. But their destination is now in sight. Because it says, when they saw the star, they were filled with joy. See, looking to God can change our focus. Looking to God can take even the darkest times in our lives and bring in light. Isn't that true? Looking to God can help us to keep focused on our goals. No matter what. No matter what comes up. The wise men remained focused. And God stood into the end. And that's what he was talking. And I like reading this in closing. In Matthew chapter 2, verse 11. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary. And they bowed down and worshipped him. Then they opened the treasures and presented him with gold, frankincense, and myrrh. That is because they stayed focused. And because of the way they stayed focused, they reached their goal. And they saw the Messiah. And they were overjoyed. Oh, come let us adore him. Christ the Lord.